Hi, my name is Rulon Brown. I'm the founder of Key Leaves. We make woodwind care products. And today I am thrilled to be here chatting with my good friend, Dr. Robert Brooks. Robert, thank you so much for taking time to chat today.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about this new product.
Yeah, we have some show and tell today for you all. So before we dive into that, a little bit about Robert. I'm just going to give a mile high view. He is a celebrated saxophonist, an educator. He's professor at Ohio State. We go Buckeyes. And we met probably 5 or 6 years ago at a North American Saxophone Alliance event, and we've just been talking saxophone stuff. And one day he messaged me with a really cool question, and I'm not going to spoil. I'm going to let him kind of tell that story. But he came at me with kind of this thing I'd never thought of, and we started this fun exploration that has led to what we're going to share with you today, and that I think will be pretty exciting for saxophone players. So, Robert, why don't you tell folks a little bit about how we started getting into this and your journey into this saxophone situation that we ended up trying to work on?
I started with a little bit of classical background, but I'm primarily a jazz saxophonist. I teach jazz saxophone and improvisation at Ohio State. And a part of that was playing vintage horns for a long time. I was, like a lot of people, playing Selmer Mark Sixes for most of my career. And I'm now playing P. Moran instruments, and I really love those. And modern horns often, if not exclusively, have those high F sharp keys. And it kind of got me working on using that key a little more. I would have students beforehand who would come in, they would ask about that key, and I would effectively tell them, I don't want you to use it. The design isn't good. You don't need it. And even there was a certain point where I would encourage students to look for instruments that didn't have that key, because I may have been convinced by some people that it affected the tone. But as I started playing these modern horns, I kind of came into this concept of, this key has to work. If I have it, people are paying for it. I might as well learn how to use it and try to use it in an effective way. And I had students and myself who kind of had a wide variety of how to press that button. Some of them were scrunching their fingers. I had one student who's a particularly egregious offender who would, for some reason, use all three of his right hand fingers to press the
Whoa,
key.
overachiever.
Uh, he really meant it. And but as I started using it, I kind of was, oh, do I use my middle finger? Do I use my ring finger? Wasn't sure. And I certainly take it really seriously as a teacher, of that I want to be able to, advise my students in doing that stuff. And what it kind of came to me was, the design is obviously shoehorned into the rest of the keyword, right?
I
If
agree.
the saxophone was initially invented with that key, it probably wouldn't be there. Um, and so what would I want to do? And what it came down to, and what the initial question was, is there a way to press this button without leaving my fingers leaving the pearls? Because that's a big thing I talk about in saxophone technique with my students. There's no reason they should ever not be in contact with those buttons. And of course, using that, even if it's only one finger, turned into taking my fingers off of that, and it made using the key a little cumbersome. And I understood why some people avoided it, or why it wasn't being used maybe as much as it could have been.
Right.
And so I contacted you. Is there a way that we could design something that would allow me to press the key with the inside of my finger?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that is kind of where we started.
Yeah. And just for folks who are viewing this or maybe even just listening to this, imagine your hand, your right hand being on your sax. You've got your thumb placed where you're natural and relaxed. You got your one, two, three fingers on the pearls, and your right pinky's floating, ready to act as it needs to for the bottom pinky keys. But whenever you're going to reach that high F sharp, you're pivoting a little bit to maybe go up and hit the high E, and then you're shrinking back. You bring back a
Mhm.
finger and you drop. And the more I got chatting with you, Robert, I was like, yeah, that's really dumb. Like I knew it
Yeah.
never felt super comfortable to me. I would do it, but I was like, why are we asking people to essentially take their relaxed hand posture, crinkle something back, press down, lift up, crinkle forward, be ready to play again. That's like
Mhm.
a four-step motion
Yeah.
that should just be like a boom flick, right? And
And
so,
I'm even, yeah, and I even notice it in the demonstration you're talking about. You're using two fingers.
well, that's because
Yeah.
sometimes like if I was hitting high F, if I was using my front fork F, right? I'm using that, then I'll use my middle finger. But if I'm going up and I'm hitting a clean high F and then
Sure. Okay.
in, I might use my ring.
Yeah.
So I personally developed my high F sharp key use with middle
It's,
and ring,
yeah.
depending on the usage for whatever felt most correct, and especially on soprano. Right, I've got a Selmer Series 3 soprano that I absolutely love, and when I'm up there, everything's so tight. I'm doing things different there for the keys.
Yeah. Hmm.
Sorry to
Yeah.
jump in on that. I want to really focus on that because that was the problem that like you brought forward because you also have like lumberjack hands, man. You got some big
Yeah,
hands.
I do have big hands, and that's another thing. I play with risers on all of my instruments. I joke with people as part of the reason why I don't play a ton of soprano. You have to pay extra, and it's not really comfortable. You know what I mean? But to me, in part of that conversation, it honestly felt really similar to the first time I used your thumb pad. That it
Yeah,
was
the Rulon rest. Yeah.
yeah, the Rulon rest. Yeah. And we talked about that. And I kind of like had this moment. I was like, yeah, if I tell students all the time to not use the hook. So why have a hook then? And this
Yeah.
kind of felt like the same thing. I'm telling my students not to take their fingers off of these keys and not to do those motions. So why is this being allowed basically to a certain extent? And so initially I kind of looked into, because like I said, I use other key risers on my saxophones. And I was like, oh, well, I would, maybe I could get a riser, but quickly realized that for the size of my hands, it would have to be giant for that to kind of fit on and be able to do what I want to do because, I certainly play with curved fingers in my right hand. And so it's not even that it has to be able to come to that point. It kind of has to come inside. And
Yeah.
that's something, yeah, because of that, that's something that I particularly noticed on my alto is that I think I actually needed more on that instrument because what is that? The circumference,
The arc of your
the
relaxing,
arc of the
right?
instrument is a little
Fingers.
bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, so yeah, so that kind of led us to talking about, well, how would this work? And then that kind of has led, you certainly down a design path, and for me, it's been really fascinating to think about all of the possibilities that having that key be accessible kind of unlocks, and that's been really exciting. And certainly some of it is, it's another button to press for particularly Altissimo fingerings and to help stabilize things. But there's kind of this other side that I think can be really exciting. I don't know if you want to get into that yet or if there's other stuff you want to talk about
Well,
first.
why don't we show folks what it is we did, and
Okay, cool.
then let's dig into like the cool sax geekery of Altissimo and
Yeah.
different fingerings. But let's now that we've kind of teased like, hey, the problem set, let's show them what we've been up to. So,
Okay, cool.
you've got a horn there with it on, right? Your alto, your tenor. What do you want to show us?
Yeah, my alto's in the bag. I have my tenor here next to my desk. So I'll try to line that up.
Yeah. So you have
So
two
this,
risers on your side keys, and now you have a big tall. You have three spacers on that riser because this is an adjustable height riser, and it crisscrosses some heavy duty rubber bands around the key arm to lock that key in. And you've got all three risers under that, don't you?
yeah, so this high F sharp riser is at this highest setting.
Yep.
Um, and it has the two rings that's very stable. But something that we certainly talked about from a design standpoint that I think is important is that it doesn't have to be permanent,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so it feels very stable. It doesn't move at all. But if I need to take it off, I can. And certainly sometimes, I recently had a really, really great saxophonist try out my instrument and I had it on and he's like, what is this? And I was like, oh, let me take that off really quick. and
Yeah,
it took a couple seconds, and then I don't have to worry about oh I got to get the sizing right or the positioning.
yeah.
It takes a couple seconds to put on and a couple seconds to come off, but it's still very stable. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have all of the risers in, and you'll have to remind me if
So
there's a millimeter.
I'm gonna probably stitch in something here for folks to see this, but here it is. Here you see these two big rubber bands. It comes with two sets of bands. Whoop, as I drop one. So here's a big, there's two that are big, and then there's two that are small.
Yeah.
And this gives you your different height adjustment depending on how many risers you want on it. And what you've got is you've got your top rounded key touch, right? And this, I mean, if you want just a little bit of boost, you just put that on, right? And so this is your, use my bald head here. This is what it's really useful for. So you can see that it's just a rounded key design that has a similar kind of rounded key touch that you would expect for a side key. And then it has these interlocking spacer risers, and each one is 3 millimeters. So by the time you're done with this, I'm going to say it wrong. I think it's 17 millimeters. Anyway, I'll put up a graphic. Anyway, you can jack this up really ridiculously high
Mhm.
if you need to. And so on the key itself, you can see here I just have the key touch, right? And then I have riser, one riser stacked on there. And for me on my alto, I love this because my hand on my alto, this lets me just do that. If I want to drop
Yep.
my middle knuckle, or if I'm coming way up, I can drop my ring finger knuckle. That's all I need. And Robert, you were talking about how it's really stable. You know, this crisscross that's happening on here goes around the key arm and it V's out and locks into the end pieces. So you really do. It's not like when I was a teenager, I went to go get a high palm key riser for my D key, and it was one of those rubber things, and I stuck it on, and the more I'd play aggressively on a
Yeah.
gig or something, it was like this thing's just flopping off. So I really didn't want that. I wanted something that was going to be stable and awesome, and yet, like you said, you can take it off in an instant if you want. Um,
Yeah, and it doesn't, it's not gonna because of the plastic, it's not gonna do anything to the finish of an
yeah,
instrument. It doesn't scratch because the tension isn't so unbearably high that it's hard to get off and you worry about bending keys. Yeah, and those rings do a really great job of keeping it centered on the key too. It kind of has an automatic centering, so that way you're not having to worry about getting the positioning down exactly.
true, true.
Um, and so
Yeah.
I really like that too.
Yeah, so this is the Rulon key riser system, patent pending,
Yeah.
because we've got this system now that can work on the key. It can adjust height radically, very quickly. And then just to give you a quick sense of how fast it comes off, I would just pop off one of these rubber bands, slide out the riser, take off the rubber bands. Done.
Yep.
Right? And to put it back on, you just put the rubber bands back into place. Um, so that's the kind of one size adapts to fit any hand on any horn that has the high F sharp. Um, and then on our website, keyleaves.com, you can go, and if you get the plastic version and you love that and it's like, hey, I found the height I need, then you can come back and you can order a gold plated version that is to the specific height you want. And if you want, like, hey, I know I'm going to use this the rest of my life on my horn, you could have a repair tech solder it onto your key exactly where you want it, or you can use the waterproof adhesive. It's super safe on finishes, and you can just lock that metal riser onto your key touch. And that's going to be an option that's available to people. Once you've tried this and found the height that you like on your specific horn, if you want to commit to a more kind of blingin permanent fixture on your horn, you could do that with the gold plated metal. And I think I'll at some point I'll probably do a rhodium plated as well, because if you got a silver horn, you want
Yeah.
that color tone to match.
Something that's important to talk about from with the plastic design, the removability is great and there's all that stuff. I kind of joke about it. It's kind of an incognito accessory because your hands are over it all the time. So
That's
it's
true.
funny. I will play, my instrument. I've had it on there for a while, and I've had it on gigs and done stuff, and people are looking at the horn and they don't ever notice.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it can be, but I totally agree. I think I'm excited certainly to try a metal one to see if if it feels different, and I don't know, add some mass to your instrument. I know we all love that. So
Now, I'm
uh
not going to say it's going to change the tone of your instrument. I'm just going to say it's going to make you the best saxophonist ever. That's it.
absolutely.
You get the gold-plated version. You're going to play like Joe Henderson.
Yep.
Take my word for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
That's
no,
funny.
man. I'm
Well,
not. Yeah. Well, that's a whole different conversation, man.
sure, sure. So the other thing, I'm gonna put my horn down. The other thing that I think is important to talk about from the design standpoint, and because what I was looking for is partly large hands, but also partly just ease of in the ergonomics and about developing that. I use a phrase with my students that I want to do exactly as much as work as I need to do and no more. And that was kind of a part of that, but I think it can help with a lot of different use cases. And I think the height is an important thing to kind of point out. If you're not wanting to try that kind of actuation, that just the key touch, just the small piece, might make it a little bit easier for you to not have as much finger travel
Yep.
if you want to use high F sharp in the normal way. That can be, totally helpful. I think what it is a lot of people leave that key. I think there's so many modifications that people do to a lot of their ergonomics with palm keys, and F sharp is for some people like I used to be, don't ever use it. And for other people, they kind of make it work. So that's kind of something else. And then you actually had a piece. I was saying I was using all the risers, but you had a piece on your uh
Oh, yeah,
what you
right.
just showed that I don't have. So I have all of the like the spacer risers, but there's another piece on that.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So this is the three risers and the key touch, and they're all flat, right? And so they're all going to go right onto a flat key, and you have a flat touch.
Yeah.
Most the touches are flat. And I've tried this on an Eastman with a slight bevel, just slight round, and it fits great with the flat. But I found that the Yamaha Z, the custom Zs, have this beautiful, very beveled, very rounded key touch, similar to your side B flat, C, high
Yeah.
E. And so what I did is I created a beveled, I don't know if you can see the bevel here. Again, I'll use my bald head. You can
There you
see
go.
you can see that it's rounded. So this is going to sit down on like a Yamaha Custom Z or something that does have a real rounded touch. And this can be your bottom spacer to get you that nice purchase is the
Yeah,
tech.
I was gonna say, yeah, to make
It
it
will
as
give you
simple.
purchase on the key. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
And and again, like if you have a horn that is gold plated, right? A precious finish, you don't want even micro scratches on the instructions, and I can show you a little bit of these instructions. You could just take a piece of masking tape and put under it, right? Just painter's tape, masking tape, even clear tape, just something that's going to be a buffer between anything hard and your premium, high end finish. Uh,
Yeah.
that's anybody could just grab a piece of tape, do that, and then you're going to have contact that way. Yeah. So maybe we should, with that, look at kind of the product listing as it, we're about
Sure.
to, we're getting ready to put this into the world. Why don't I share screen and I'll show folks where we're at, right? Let's do that. Let's show and tell. Okay, y'all. Well, so here we are. This is the Rulon saxophone key riser for high F sharp. Here you can see kind of a top view. It has a very subtle logo debossed into it. And then here is kind of a front-on view. And you can see how much it raises it up to be part of the arch of your hand. And this is on an alto sax. And then here's just a quick thing to show how
Yeah.
your fingers don't have to come way off the pearls for you to activate this. And then here's how it can stack. The basic riser is 7 millimeters, but you can add three risers to get you up to 16 millimeters. That's a pretty big boost. And if for some reason you need more, well, just contact us. We can give you more risers. But what we found working with Robert, who has really big, awesome hands, I swear you're like a lumberjack or like a or something. The 16 works great for him. And then this view I really like because you can see the arc, right? There's the pearls that you're going to touch. You can see how much just even one riser raises it so it's a more natural arc for the curvature of your hand. And then here's all the pieces with the two sizes of O-rings, your spacers, and then the key touch itself. So this is the saxophone high F sharp key riser system. It adjusts to fit any sax with a high F sharp. And then these are just mock-ups right now because we're going to be making these as people custom order them. But if you needed 16 millimeters height, this is it. We can make this for you. We'll gold plate it. It's going to have a laser marked logo, probably on the side. And this will be pretty blinging. So that is the riser system, and the instructions that come with it are really straightforward. Don't eat it or you're going to choke. Uh, Here's the parts. Assess if you have a flat key or if you have the rounded key, right? Here's a custom Z with the rounded key. And then that's going to determine if you use the rounded spacer. And then basically just how to put it on. If you want to just put on one ring and then the other one slides through that ring and then it snaps in and you're there. And then you go crazy with what's next is say, okay, here's my high E, and I just drop my knuckle. I'm not recoiling my fingertip. If I'm playing high E or F, I can get that instantly, right? I love that about this. And that again is just showing how it really can reach your knuckle. And then if you need to do crazy fork fingerings, right, for alternate fingerings, you have a much more natural kind of fork movement rather than curling the middle finger or having to curl a finger touch away from the pearl. And I'm really exaggerating in this short video, but it gives you the sense of how you can do that. So let's get into the fun stuff now. After we went back and forth on some of the prototypes that I sent you, you had this really cool thing that you got in touch with me about, and it was awesome because I had been goofing around with them, like, yeah, this is really cool. I like this. But then you're like, man, I'm going to use this for high G. Like this has
Yeah,
changed how I play high G in Altissimo on my horn. I'm like,
yeah.
what? Yeah, that's a super unstable tone on some horns. And you were like, it really stabilizes. And now I just use a combo. And so talk to me about kind of the next step of where this led you as a player with your high tones and Altissimo.
Yeah, it's kind of been interesting because it's kind of come down to, I think, a shift in how how to utilize that key, because there's almost an element of high F sharp, in the same way that some people refer to the high F key or a front key as kind of can be limiting. I'm only thinking about it for that one thing, but really what the this is unlocking for myself, and I think for hopefully for a lot of people, is being able to use that key as a vent for Altissimo. So what's really common with my students, especially when they're getting into being able to play Altissimo, and this was certainly true for me when I was younger, is high Altissimo seemed easier than low Altissimo, that mid range. And a part of that, I think, because those notes are maybe a little less stable, but I think it's for a lot of instruments, and I certainly noticed this with my alto, that with some of the fingerings I would use, I really had to put a lot of lip pressure. I felt like I was biting a lot. And the phrase or the term that people use is lipping up a note, that I really had to give it that. And effectively, what you're able to do with this key now that it's accessible and usable, and it's easier, like you showed, to use in combination with other Altissimo fingerings, is instead of having to bite into some of those notes, I can now vent a half step higher than my front F keys. So when I press my front F, of course, it opens up. Oh, wait, can you see that? Yeah. It front opens up that key. But now I can vent a half step higher. And
Right.
some of those Altissimo fingerings actually will work, and they feel sharp a little bit, but that allows me to relax into those notes, and not have to do as much biting, which I think can be common, like I said.
Yeah.
But it also led to using just finding different combinations, uh, and finding Altissimo fingerings that also work better with other Altissimo fingerings. So for me, the new, I guess, Altissimo G that I'm using is octave key B, and then actuating that high F sharp key. And it is far and away for my students and for myself the easiest slotting Altissimo G
Nice.
that any of them have used. It's funny to have, because obviously, and maybe I shouldn't say this, you could use that fingering without the Rulon key riser, but it's not as
No, that's
effective.
good. Do it. Yeah. I mean, hey, if it makes better sound, do it. If you're more
Yeah,
comfortable with the riser, use it. I get it. It's all
yeah,
right
absolutely.
to say that.
But I've had students who certainly, because I do teach some high school students. I'm pretty selective about that studio, but I've had some students that at the high school level who can't get that Altissimo G out, and I go, oh, try this, especially on tenor sax, but it also works on alto, and immediately.
Yeah.
And a part of that is, and there's, I'm sure we could get into the science in terms of the voicing position and stuff, but it really feels like I'm just continuing to go up my palm keys. There's
Yes.
no real difference in what I'm doing embouchure pressure wise, voicing airspeed between a high F, using my side keys, and that G. It's
Yeah.
very, very comfortable. And similarly, on this instrument, when I play front F and then high F sharp, that note's actually kind of sharp. It's a little bit, it slots a little bit higher than I want it to, than where I'm comfortable with. And it's kind of funny because I was messing around with that high G fingering, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I was trying to dance around to use that high F sharp. And I just was messing around, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I already have learned to use the bis key effectively. That lowers a B natural down by a half step. I wonder if it would lower this high G, and it does, and it's actually more in tune on my tenor sax to use octave key, B and bis and high F sharp to play that high F sharp note. So now not only are those notes much more simply achieved physically, but they're also much easier to produce, and they're more in tune. And that's, I think, the exciting part. By being able to effectively use this key for a higher vent, it unlocks so many other altissimo fingerings. And I have, certainly been annoying my wife and my dog for the past, several weeks of just sitting there. Does this work? Does this work? If I add this, what happens to this fingering? Or can I, maybe with this certain fingering, it doesn't make us change. So I could take away other fingers, and now I can simplify this note, or maybe it slots in better. I know we have a fingering chart that uses
Yeah. Yeah.
charts.
Robert was talking about, hey man, I found this, I found this, I found this, I really love this. This is so much better. I was like, man, we need to do a fingering chart of altissimo fingerings
Yeah.
optimized for use with the high F sharp key. And so he put together this chart, and it's got 5 really cool fingerings that are just, like he's saying, just really work for him, and he found it's working for his students. So that is available at keyleaves.com/sax lesson.
Yeah,
And
for free.
and when you get the Rulon F sharp key riser, there's a follow-up email saying, hey, here's your fingering chart, try it out. So definitely check that out. It's free to folks, and it comes from Dr. Robert Brooks
Yeah.
in this experience. So check that out for
And
sure.
what I would encourage people who are looking at that fingering chart to think about, and it's something that for some people at first it might not be as comfortable. Similar for me when I was first started playing modern horns, I realized I was doing a ton of work and that I didn't need to do it anymore. I think there's an element of that with Altissimo because I think for that high F sharp and that high G, those notes, that's pretty instantaneous for most people. Some of these fingerings, you do have to remember to relax quite a bit. So sometimes with your for your use, especially if you have tension issues, they're gonna be really sharp, but they're stable enough that you can kind of relax into that. And particularly, you showcased in on the product page, G sharp moving
Yeah.
to F sharp and how much easier that is. The Altissimo fingering that I have for Altissimo D also uses that kind of, previously, if not possible, incredibly difficult possible, fingering of these two keys and high F sharp at the same time,
Love it.
right? And before I would that's
Yeah.
really stretching,
Yeah.
right? To keep this straight. Part of that it's a hand anatomy thing, right? Because these two fingers don't move as independently as these two
Yeah,
do.
but anytime you're curling a finger, you're not efficient. That
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
movement to curl is not efficient. And that's what blew me away as we looked at this problem. I'm like, why the heck are we asking people to curl? We're not bassoonists. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
We shouldn't
absolutely.
have these weird finger movements. We need to just be like flicking fingers as fast as we
Yeah,
can. Yeah,
exactly.
very cool.
So
Yeah,
I would encourage people to try that out, and then of course to just experiment. I know there are other fingerings and other things, and part of that is might be brand specific. Part of that might be the kind of mouthpiece and the equipment that you play.
right.
But it's been a lot of fun to kind of work on that, and then building that in a part of my technique with that focus of I want to do just enough work.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. So
yeah.
so I want to call that out for a second, something that I heard you say in several ways just now. Relaxing. Being
Hmm.
able to play high, focused, and relaxed.
Yeah.
That's what we all want, right? We don't want to have tons of bite pressure. We don't want to have tons of extreme throat voicing. We want to try to be neutral and relaxed as we can everywhere in our body. And so, like with Altissimo, you mentioned how when you first started, you were biting. Same thing. The first
Yeah.
Altissimo note I ever had to play was like a high D at the end of this tune, and my band director's like, "Here's the fingering," and I'm just like biting and lipping
Yeah.
everything I can, and then I figured out the rest, right? But as I matured and as I studied the instrument, as we all do, you take it seriously. You learn the anatomy of the instrument. You learn the anatomy of your vocal chamber. You learn reed resonance, and the more you do that, the more you learn. Okay, I need to voice. I need to relax and let this instrument, this mechanism, do the work for me. And what I love what you said is, hey, if the mechanism is only venting here, and that's what I have to work with, and then now suddenly it's able to vent a half step higher, that is new mechanical possibility, right,
Yeah.
for you.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love about the fingering chart. And we're, I hope as you continue to develop and
Yeah.
discover different things, we'll keep adding to that chart because it's really cool. Like it's cool to like have this thing that for you felt tension in the body and like, oh, am I gonna get it tonight? Like, is that G sharp gonna voice just right? And suddenly it's like, boom.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
that's a great feeling. Like that's what it's about. It's not about like cool gadgets. It's about that feeling when you're playing, the feeling like I'm there. So
Yeah, and to have it come, so quickly is really nice too. I think certainly when I was younger, I think I was fine with investing a lot of time because I felt like I had a lot of it. And now it's nice to have something that opens this up and I go, oh wait, that's just easier immediately. And I don't need to invest a ton of the time and I'm more focusing on some of those core principles. So I think that's just an important thing to think about, certainly with being relaxed. And part of that certainly is what we're doing in the oral cavity for voicing and what you're talking about, but in the same way with your hands. Something else, actually, a short anecdote that was also a part of like coming up with this and realizing the problem is, I'm very fortunate that I get to work with a lot of great undergraduate and graduate students at Ohio State. I have a selective high school studio, but I also have students that are, maybe semi-professional musicians. I've taught some retired band directors and things like that, but certainly are on the older side, and people who are still, inspiring and driven to continue to get better and doing their thing. But one of them, particularly, is a really fine saxophone player and clarinetist, and he was having the issue with actuating that key where he was getting pain
Yeah.
by moving that. And he had kind of, because that was in this conversation, we had already, talked about some things. And I was like, oh, well, maybe, I was at that point where I was like, well, maybe you should start using this key. Maybe there's something here. And he was kind of like, yeah, I've experimented with it. But effectively, he was like, I can really only bend my index finger. And that's an even worse position, to put your hand in. And then that was kind of like, yeah, it really, for me was underscoring and talking with him that it was like, yeah, this is something that is just as much about relaxing and efficiency here with voicing and Altissimo as it is relaxing and efficiency in your right hand,
Yeah.
particularly. And I feel like for me, I certainly took a big step forward when I started using the Rulon Rest. And this is another step in right hand technique. I don't know if it's, maybe this is, you know, continuing to be anecdotal. I feel like people have more issues in their right hand than they do left hand technique wise. And maybe that's just my own experience in terms of because there's no way to have weight. And I think the ergonomics, maybe in my own mind, in the left hand of the saxophone are a little better in modern horns.
Huh.
Um, and I think this is certainly an upgrade if you have particularly big hands, if you have pain in motion or restricted mobility, it removes that need. And like I said too, even with small hands, with just having, I don't have a free one, but just having the top key touch piece in terms of having, I might still want to curl, but I don't have to go as much.
Yeah.
And that was really kind of, always something that I'm stressing and working with my students and myself. And this is kind of, I think, a great, advancement for that, both, like I said, for oral cavity relaxation and for your right hand technique.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you. That's very I'm honored, man. I'm
Yeah.
glad to have played some small part in helping you relax and enjoy your music more. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been awesome. And like I said, I've had students that have been trying things out and just getting used to that as a concept. And it's been really exciting as a teacher because that's what I love about teaching is giving people that aha moment.
Oh yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun to have a couple of my students, a couple of my privileged students have seen some of the prototypes and in the locked door in my office with the windows drawn have even maybe used one, and every single time they give me that look, they go, wait a minute, oh, because I might describe it and they're like, what, and then they play it and they're like, oh my gosh, that solves every problem. All the issues I had, right? And I
That's
joke
it.
about
We're
it. I go,
done.
yeah,
We solved it. We're
yeah,
out. Okay, thanks. Go.
exactly. Yeah, and I make this joke and I said, yeah, so now instead of spending your practice time dealing with this system that kind of doesn't work well, now I can, and exactly what you said, I can focus on making music because that's what I really care about, right? And that allows me to do that easier. And I don't know if I would describe myself as like a gearhead, but I certainly am happy to have something, and especially something that's as cost effective as this, that makes a big impact
Yeah.
and really, really helps out. It's been a really exciting experience to be a part of that with you and to share that with a couple students and stuff. So I'm excited for more people to try it and hear about their experiences too.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What have we what let's recap here. Make sure we've got
Yeah.
everything. We talked about the ergonomics of keeping hands relaxed and how bringing the saxophone towards your hand in subtle ways can help you just flick knuckles, flick
Exactly.
larger muscles, right?
Keep the arc
Keep that
in your
arc, not breaking the arc into weird contortions.
yeah.
We've talked about how that unlocked Altissimo for you in a different way, especially for not just your oral cavity, but also hand relaxation, and being able to operate there with greater confidence, greater clarity. We talked about how people can access this product, adapt it to their hands and their saxes quickly, and then also if you want something that's permanent or more high-end finish, there are those options available. Um, Yeah, I mean that's we covered the most important things, and now I just invite people to ask questions. Let us know what you think. Try this out. Tell us how it works on your horn, what it unlocks for you, whether you have issues with aging or injury, whether you have issues with trying to hit the notes that you want, and this unlocks something new a half step higher that's going to speak and vent better. That's what we're really excited to hear more of, and keep refining and evolving this system of the Rulon key riser system, the adjustable key riser system. Uh,
Yeah.
so uh, I'm excited. It's out there now. You've all heard it. You've heard from the expert, Robert Brooks, Dr. Robert Brooks, and his journey into this. So before we hop off, is there anything that you'd like to add, Robert? And please be sure in that to tell us where we can learn more about what you're doing, because you're up to some really great music as an artist, and we want to make sure people have a chance to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, I teach at the Ohio State University, and I teach jazz saxophone and improvisation there. And part of, like I said before, what I love about education is building on, the ideas and working together with people, with my students, with fellow colleagues there. And I think that's what I'm excited about with this product, is for other people to share their experiences, so I can learn an altissimo fingering from somebody else, and I can learn different ways to kind of work on that, and we can continue to improve the field as we use in academia. But people, if you want to check me out on Instagram at Dr. Robert Brooks Jazz, I'm on all the social media platforms, or my website, robertbrooksjazz.com. I've got some exciting stuff. We're in the process of planning an album release tour. I'm gonna have an album coming out fairly soon in the next coming months. Late summer 2025, might be very late summer 2025, and which I'm really excited about. It's all original compositions by me, and has some really fantastic musicians on there. Um, and yeah, I'm just excited to kind of like you said, release this into the wild and see the amazing things our community does with it.
Absolutely. Me too. Me too. Well, thank you, Robert. I really appreciate your time
Yeah,
and this collaboration. It's definitely borne some really fun fruit, and now we get to let everybody taste it.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's exciting.
yeah. All right, y'all. Hey, thanks for checking out this interview with Dr. Robert Brooks. There's going to be links in the description for all the things that we talked about, and we hope you'll keep checking back with us, keyleaves.com, and all the things that we have cooking for the saxophone community. Thanks, everyone. My name is Rulon Brown, and this has been Dr. Robert Brooks. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.